Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I'm your host. Today's guest is Elliot Smith, who is with Motmot. You're the CEO of Motmot, I should say. Thanks for joining me, Elliot.
Yeah, no, Chad, I super appreciate you having me on the program today. This is going to be a fun time.
It is going to be a fun time because you're an entrepreneur and you have a great story. And the first thing we want to know is, how did you even get into civil infrastructure?
Oh, man. So my background is I'm a municipal engineer. I did consulting for almost 7 years. And, it's like, this is so awkward, but I didn't know that civil engineering was even a thing until I was probably like 23, 24 years old. Loved to build things with my hands, like who doesn't? And was kind of lost for a long time. Found that civil engineering was an option. And
Nice. Did you work for a construction company at some point in time?
yeah, so when I was a municipal engineering consultant, I worked with an awesome company called OHM Advisors. And as a municipal engineer, you're kind of touching a little bit of everything. So, you're doing like hydraulics, you're doing road design, you're doing bridge design, you're working out there in the field, getting experience. Yeah, it's a engineering position that it's kind of like one of those jack of all trades kind of skill set, ace of none.
Interesting. So did you start working for an engineering firm and then kind of got into construction? Just kind of understand a little bit more about like where you started.
Yeah. So graduated with my civil engineering degree, got into the space after that, got hired right before I even graduated.
Okay.
And And so it all happened after graduation, right? Yeah. And so like one day we had a lunch and learn with this company that came in. They're like, hey, we want to tell you about our product. And they want to inspect pipes and they want to charge $50,000 per mile. And I was like, okay, I don't know why we're not multiplying this by 4, but it's $200,000 per mile. Got it. I'm like, that's crazy. Sitting on a construction site one day, I'm like, that's a lot of money. Like in this one city, there's 500 miles of water main. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So that's kind of when the idea of my company came and trying to help communities know what their underground infrastructure looks like.
Yeah. That's interesting because you started putting the math together with the miles of piping around America, especially when it comes to water distribution. It's like 2 million miles, roughly, something
Yeah,
like that, approximately, which
2.2
is,
million.
yeah, if you're looking at 50,000 a mile, roughly that's a lot. That's big, right? I mean, it's
So
huge.
it's 50,000 a quarter mile.
A quarter mile. That's right. You and I talked
50,000
about that. A
a
quarter
quarter
mile.
mile.
$250,000 for a whole mile, right?
Right. Yeah.
If I do the
Can
math.
be if
My
it's
brain's not
transmission.
working correctly.
You got it. It depends. It totally depends on the
So it's
environment,
about
but it's a lot.
200,000, 250. Yeah, got it.
You got
Interesting. So you had no idea about civil engineering until you were 24, roughly,
it. Yep.
and you get on a construction site. You got some experience a little bit, and you started putting some math together, and realized that holy crap, this is a big market. There's a lot of potential here, and why are we? What's interesting me is like, how did you think about it when you did the math, right? You're like $50,000, and there's like no solution to the problem, right? There was still like leaks and things like that, and water pipes, things like that's still happening to this day. Leak detection,
Yep.
technology. So walk the audience into like, after you're sitting there doing the math, what did you start doing after that? Like after you started putting things together?
Yeah. After I took out my napkin and I carried the one and realized, holy cow, our communities are way overspending for just simple visibility.
Mm,
At that time in my career, I'm just a graduate engineer with a crazy idea and sitting on a job site. So I'm like, who am I to do anything, right? And
yeah.
so like, well, number one, like let's get some credibility. Like let's go and get that PE license. Check that box off. Number two, I don't know anything about business. Like I'm like basically a civil engineer is like a dirt or water scientist, right? Cool. Let's go apply to business school. Let's go get our MBA. All right, check. Like applied for that, got in here at Michigan State. Now, okay, this has become a little more real. What am I going to do for my 2 years in MBA? Well, let's use it as an incubator for the company. Let's look at all the resources Michigan State has and do pitch competitions, get a website, become a C Corp. Like a lot of boxes got checked in the last 2 years, like getting seed fund raising, right? Getting
Yeah.
patents. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have everything figured out, but I got a pretty good idea and a pretty good team that I'm building that we're getting it done.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Now, give us a little idea about your like the product and how the idea kind of came to fruition. You were telling me about using, robots kind of in pipes. Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, I actually have a model right here for
Okay.
the audience if they're doing like a visual. But yeah, this is kind of what it looks like. It's meant to fit into 8-inch diameter or bigger distribution pipe. The whole idea is right now, if you want to go inspect water main, you have a significant large cost for mobilization. It's your mob. Typically, maybe the numbers have been updated, but you can't go past a quarter mile of inspection. So you're putting in some kind of device, you're looking at the condition, you're taking it out, you're chlorinating, and so you're continuously doing this. And so like there's a lot of mobilization, there's a lot of just labor going into inspecting a pipe. If you could somehow figure a way to keep that device in there long term, let's say 10 or 20 miles at a time, you can save significant costs. And so that's the idea.
Wow. So it looked like the device you pulled up there has
Yeah.
twin, like both sides can go up and down the pipe, has the propellers to do that. Wow. And you're talking
Yeah.
about,
So,
yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead. The front looks exactly like the front, and there's no back end. So, like, if
Right.
you're going through the system, you're neutrally buoyant. If you run into like tuberculation or a gate valve that's halfway closed, that's okay. Like, you can back it up, and then this is now the new front, right? So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into the design and a lot of IP that we collected.
That's pretty cool, man. And you just came up out of the blue. You're just like, man, there's got to be a better way. And then you started designing this thing.
A lot of there's a lot of hours that you're inspecting, and so you got time to not only get your quantities, but you got some downtime where I'm just kind of drawing on the back on some field books. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I mean, that's creative, man. I think that's funny because, I was going to ask you like the next question is talk about some AI, but I think when you were sitting there writing this, developing this thing on a, piece of paper, so to speak, it had to be interesting to kind of see it actually work once you've developed the prototype and get it into the system, so to speak. It had to be really cool just as, see it start functioning.
Yeah, so like full disclosure, right now we have a prototype. This is a 3D model. Our prototype's a little bit bigger, and we're able to check off the box. Can you drive it autonomously underwater, and can it maneuver around underwater? And so
Okay.
we got that. Our next phase is we're working with the waterworks department here on campus to shrink it down and actually put it into the pipe. So it's a bunch of stage milestones.
Yep.
The autonomous AUR part and sensing technology we're good on. Now it's about just getting in the pipe.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of concerns and questions are going to be raised, I would assume. Maybe we can address some of those right now. So the first thing I thought of is like, man, what happens if that thing gets stuck in the
Yeah.
system? What that would look like? Have you thought about those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. Like you're messing with people's drinking water. So the last thing you want is to lose their service or yeah, just negatively affect it, right?
Right.
So and that does happen. Like other companies, they'll have devices and then they get stuck and then they have to
Mm.
do like an emergency excavation or sometimes they get lost.
Mm.
Like there are devices in
Wow.
our water systems that are lost and you can't track them down. So we have a few different things that we mitigate the risk. One is just putting propulsion on it. Like a lot of devices right now don't have propulsion; it just kind of goes with the flow of the water. Now we're able to get out if there's obstruction. Or I'm trying not to deliver too much of the secret sauce to the world,
No,
but
I
like
get
the
it.
time
Yeah.
the time of day that you inspect, it's critical. Like when you and I wake up, there's a huge pull from the system. Everyone's flushing their toilet. Everyone's taking a shower. That water is roaring. It's going 5 to 8 feet per second. What if you can inspect when everyone's sleeping? It's a lot easier to go reverse course when it's going half a foot per second. All these little things end up mattering, and that's part of our unique value proposition.
I love the creativity of this thing, and super excited to learn more about it as we go, and really see it in action, and really help cities find leaks, because that's the main purpose of this, right? Is to find the leaks.
That's a great question. That was what we had thought. We were like,
Okay.
hey, we can go out there, we can find leaks, like we can save all this non-revenue water. It's a big problem. Like there's some communities that lose like 60, 70% of their water. That's high.
Wow.
Average is probably between 12 and 20. And so like it made sense. What we had done is we went through, it's called the National Science Foundation, their national I-Core program. And they gave us a grant, and we went out and we conducted in total over 130 interviews with water leaders, not just across America, like also across North America, like US, Canada. And we would do interviews like 30 minutes to 2 hours. Tell me about your problems. Like we met with mayors, DPW directors, some pretty big folks in AWWA, elected officials, just talking, just having conversations like this. And our original intention was to find the leaks. That's still in our top three. But what we found is really the problem is the visibility component, like knowing what your system looks like and how it's operating and having more control. Even more so, how much life does your pipe have left? When is it going to break? So that's where we're using like acoustic sensor technology, figuring out how thin that pipe is. Yeah, if you can be more predictive on breaks, you can really help the operational expenses for a community.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of, other products out there, right? They claim to do all this stuff. They claim to look at the degradation of the pipe, right? They claim to be able to do the sonaring or sonic testing to find these leaks. And kind of what you just said, when I interview a lot of directors of public works, things like that, people in infrastructure and water specifically, it sounds like there's no silver bullet out there. I just kind of did a episode yesterday with some people in water, and they're just like, man, there is no silver bullet. And the first thing I thought it was you. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
there might be a silver bullet out there somewhere soon. So, I'm really excited about this. But what are some of the other technologies out there? And because it does cost so much, and you're talking about those, sounds like there's other devices that go into the water but can get lost and just doesn't have the same functionality as what yours does. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on like what's out there and why it's really nothing's really working as well as it should be?
I believe, and I'm not going to call out the companies and their products, but
Sure.
that sounds like a libel. That sounds like a libel
Yeah.
situation.
No.
But
Yeah.
I think that they are doing a good job. There was a company purchased 2016, 2017 by another large company. I think it comes down to core competencies. So like, what is a company really good at? And if that's not your core competency, then maybe you need to readjust your strategies. The current products on the market are good. They haven't been modernized. And they, again, like the concept of keeping a device into a system long-term to save on that mob and that labor, it's a new industry. So I feel like we have an awesome idea and we have an awesome product and office service, and we're able to charge probably about 10% of what the market can. But in another 5 or 10 years, like technology is moving in a way where it might be 10% of what I'm providing, right? So it's like a very new market, and there's not a set shelf on it yet.
No, it makes sense. Yeah. And it does seem like there's this movement towards, in the next 10, 20 years of more sustainable technologies that are coming in to provide better pricing, become more efficient. And it sounds like you're at that point, man, where it's just gonna, you have the optimal technology and the device to do what we need is that, to track the system. We need something to get out and give us real-time data every day of what's going on in the system, because you just never know.
Right. It's an awesome space to be in, because like, when was the last time you've ever seen like an innovative highway or an innovative road or an innovative water main? Like civil engineering has traditionally for a long time not been that innovative.
Right.
Now that we have scalable technologies and like AI, like we're going to use AI pathway mapping to get this done. I think the industry is being more receptive of that, especially as we see construction costs balloon like they are. Like we're looking for better and cheaper ways to do things.
Yeah. And there's another company out there, a friend of mine, Robert Lee, he has the Scout. I don't know if you've ever seen the Scout. It goes in the sewer pipes. It's like a ball shaped.
Is it like a tethered RV car?
It's not, it is, I don't know if it's tethered or not, but anyway, they drop it down, it runs down, and then they snag it. I don't think it's tailored or tied up or anything like that, but they
No
definitely,
worries.
yeah, it runs down, and I know it grabs like the GIS, it grabs the points of the
Mhm.
defects, it captures all that data going down the storm. So it can literally cover 15,000 feet in an
Wow,
hour, a couple hours, something like that. It's insane, right? Think about that.
that's awesome.
From using robot cameras of driving it down, only doing 1,700 to 2,000 feet a day manually with these robotic cameras, to where you're coming out with a solution that potentially is just going to automate itself and, go up and down and inspect the water mains throughout the days and give real time information. Same thing as kind of that product, the sewer scout. It seems like that's where we're heading. And what's interesting is, I'm going to get a little kind of, on the fence here, but that's just the way it goes. We have this engineering mindset traditionally just sticking to the same old way of doing
Mhm.
business,
Yeah.
and it stifles our growth, and we have it all sitting there as technology, and but we're so focused on that hourly rate, or that, old way of doing things, because it's more expensive, there's bigger money there. I don't know, but we definitely need to get out of that mindset and change to, more efficiency and cost effectiveness.
It's weird. Like we love our tried and true systems. I wish I could have been at a firm when AutoCAD first came out. Like
Oh,
I'm interested to see like what the naysayers were with like AutoCAD. Like, no, we're just gonna keep drawing it by hand and Mylar. Like it's tried and true. We're not messing with that computer stuff, right? But now we know what AutoCAD is, and it's just like you have to adopt and you have to make things more efficient and cheaper and better for your clients. Yeah, it's just the way it's got to be.
well, you look at it this way: the federal government is not going to start just tossing more billions of dollars at the local government's infrastructure. I don't. I mean, it could happen. Like, they did give us that $1 trillion recently, but it had a
Yeah,
bunch of stuff into it that really didn't focus on roads, water, sewer, stuff like that. It was kind of like a political stunt. I don't know. It's just my opinion of
yeah.
just putting stuff in a package and sending it out there to make it look like we were doing a lot for infrastructure, but we really didn't focus where the money needed to go. So if you look at budgets, I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If you're an engineering firm, kind of going back to these budgets, if you're just upgrading water treatment facilities constantly, wastewater facilities constantly,
Yeah.
all the money's going there, and you're never focusing on the system itself, the distribution part of it, or the collection. You're literally just waiting for a collapse, entire collapse, and that's what's happening.
It, it's wild. I'm gonna start spitting out some figures here. So we're from the Midwest, right? I think are you in Chicago?
I am. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm from Detroit and right now living in East Lansing. Most of our systems were built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Our design life for pipe is typically between 80 and 100 years. Our score from the American Society of Civil Engineers for Michigan, I think we have about a D, and that was like 2 years ago. It was a D plus. Now I think it's probably a D. We're not keeping up with our infrastructure. It's old, it's leaking, it's breaking. There's some communities that will have 250 breaks a year. A minimum break, you're looking at 10 to 15K. And like if you're on the side of Port Huron like 2 years ago, that was like $10 million. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure is old and you can't see it. So like, what do you do in the system that the number one complaint is funding, right? Like everyone's like, we just need more money. Well, it's an enterprise system. Like it's self-funding. Here's the big issue is we had this infrastructure put in at a very discounted rate 80 years ago. Our water rates have only collected enough to provide you water, but it's never really been put into a fund outside of that. And at one point, you got to pay the piper. So if our water rates increase 25%, oh my gosh, like everybody's going to be in an uproar. And like that's kind of what needs to happen for us to put money into these funds to upgrade and like replace our infrastructure. It's not going to happen, but like no one's going to agree to that. Like if you can afford it, you're going to be in uproar. But also, we have a lot of affordability problems. Like there's already people that are struggling with their $40 to $60 water bill a month. It's a hard space to be in,
Hmm.
but I think if you do get the visibility and you can somehow save that non-revenue water and you can maybe put more funds back into your operating or general fund budget, just knowing and managing your system appropriately, I think that's a strategy that can get you there.
You're spot on, man. If we start adopting technology, we start looking at budgets, we start analyzing budgets of what currently is being spent and why and where, right? Think about it that
Yeah,
way. Even in
yeah,
one little small town, you really start nailing it down where the money's going. and you
Yeah.
start implementing new technologies like you and I are talking about that it can streamline and monitor 15 miles of sewer or water or whatever, right? For a fraction of the cost of what it traditionally does, right? And then we can start to see the difference, right? We start implementing that. The budgets will, either stay the same or, gradually increase because we will have to have some rate hikes at some point in time. So you're going to have, that budget money sitting there. And then the technology comes in and starts, just prioritizing the system. You start spending the money the right way. And guess what happens? It starts to neutralize, you start to balance it out. And then you start to like increase your assets value. You start maintaining it and you do it the right
Yeah,
way.
it's there are some communities that do it really well, and those communities are very transparent with their residents, and the residents understand like the value of water and like their investments. Most communities don't do that, but you really should start treating communities like a business. Like, what is water accounting? Like, that's real. That's something that's gonna be very tangible. Like, how do you do accounting, and how do you treat a business? How do you treat your community like a business?
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah, you do. And you don't see cities getting more people right now. They're understaffed. They don't have they're not implementing technology to kind of replace that, people that are leaving, which hopefully they are. I just don't see it happening yet. I hope the mindset starts shifting. Well, and if we can't find people, then we should be looking for an alternative, which should be the tech, right? I mean, it just
Yeah,
makes sense, right? Just
you're nailing it, man. That so when we did our interviews across the continent here, there were number one problem is like funding. Like, we just don't have money. It's an issue. And it's all an enterprise system. Like, we don't know how to fund anything. Number two, workforce. Like, you got folks that are aging out of the system, and civil engineering as an industry, it's not that sexy. So like, who's coming in? Not a lot of people. And like, if they are coming in, they're not getting probably paid what they're worth. And the third one's all about like public support. How do you get, if you can get people to support what you're doing and like understand it, you can probably figure out the workforce and the funding problem. But like, education from a standpoint, it's lacking. Like, I kind of always joke around. Everyone my generation knows that the powerhouse of the cell is the mitochondria, but we don't know where our water comes from. Like, you turn on the faucet, it's just magic. That's a
yeah,
problem.
that is a huge problem, and we do a terrible job at, like you said, educating. We don't have people using social media. We're still going to trade shows, and I'm an advocate for that, obviously, because I see where the place that we need to go, where all the young people, social media. Why aren't we using social media? Well, we use trade shows. So we silo ourselves. You got to pause. Okay.
Yeah, we got to pause. I'm gonna switch rooms.
So we were kind of talking about the workforce and governments, the budgets, the technologies, and a little bit of this and that. I think what I was going into was something about like how technology will offset a lot of the budgets and how we could utilize technology to help the cities really replace the workforce, right? Because
Yeah.
if we start implementing the right technologies, then you're obviously going to be able to make better decisions and so on and so forth. So, anyway, my next question was for you is how do you see the water industry accepting your technology? Like what's your thoughts on this?
I'll lead it. I'll lead it with a story. So when we were going through this NSF National High Court program, we would just, it's all about like taking information, taking in experiences, and taking all that and putting it into our business model. We were not allowed to tell them what we were doing. We're like, hey, we're students. We know we have a lab. We got in this really cool program, and we're here to talk to you. But like, we don't want to sway the witness. We're like, we don't want them to tell what we're doing. At the end of the interview, though, they'll be like, hey, like, what are you guys doing? Like, this has been an awesome interview. Like, what's going on there in the labs of East Lansing? It's like, well, like, we have this interesting idea. We're trying to build a business model. We're trying to like do water main inspection at a low rate. And they're like, tell me more. And so we're like, well, this is like, we tell them more, and they like immediately hands would go up. They're like, we want to be part of like a beta or a pilot program. Like, put us on a list. I had to stop putting people on the list. We have 8 communities, 7 in Michigan and 1 in Alaska, that want to do pilot programs with us. And I don't want to overpromise, underdeliver ever.
Right.
So I'm like, 8's kind of our max. Like, that's already kind of scaring me. But yeah, like, I think that speaks volumes. Like, communities see the value. They're looking for different ways to get the visibility into their underground. Right now, they're totally blind. Yeah. And so like, we're in the lab, we're trying to get to the communities. And so like, there's been this gap of like, well, you can't just go from the lab and start putting robots in people's pipes. Like, that's not safe. Like, Eagle's not going to allow that. I don't know if you can get a permit for that. So we talked to the water department, the waterworks here,
Yeah.
and they were all in. They're like, yes, this is an amazing idea. They're like, we're going to help you design it. And in fact, we're going to take all of our old pipe or pipe that we're not using. We're going to build an above ground testing area. We're going to connect it to the water treatment plant. And so now we can test it above ground before we put it into our systems, which they agreed to, like once we can hit our milestones. And then like, also we can use this like above ground, like testing area for operators. Now we can train operators throughout the state. Yeah, it's just like super good adoption. Everyone I talk to on the municipal side, if they get it, like they really get it and they're all in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing right there, is making something that's super simple, makes sense, and people will start to adopt it fast. I mean, then what, typically happens, not to go naysay negative, but you'll start to get resistance. I noticed in this space, and this is just my experience. As you build something that's a disruptive technology, you're going to get backlash, which is crappy about the industry that I've seen. Is you'll start getting people that are so afraid of their little connection, relationship, or whatever they have with that community, that you coming in with a new, better mousetrap, so to speak, is scary
Yeah.
to them. That's the egos and of these certain people that are there. They're just trying to protect themselves, and they don't even look at your technology. They just start talking about it, bashing it, which is a lot of what's been going on in the industry over the past couple, probably decade, at least couple decades, where new technology comes in. And that's kind of the sad side of civil infrastructure. It's like, if you do have something innovative, you do have some great concept and product, there's a lot of naysayers that'll start objecting to it, and because they don't want to lose their little revenue base or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. At least from my experience, I've seen that that happen.
Yeah, I've definitely run across some resistance. There's one that I'm still like kind of jaded about, but it was like in a pitch competition. That one I will put on blast, but maybe in a different form. But most people are actually pretty accepting. Most people are like, like they'll be a little suspicious at first. They're like, okay, you're messing with people's water. Like, how's this even going to work? Like, what about pressures? Like, what about tuberculation? Like, what about, half closed gate valves? What about things that you're just not expecting? Like, it's going to get stuck. I'm like, sure. Like, probably some of these will get stuck and we'll probably have to do an emergency, but we're going to do a lot better than I think other companies can. You should be super suspicious. Like, but once they get it, it's a magical moment where like their eyes light up. They're like, this can happen. I'm like, I think it can happen too. And so
Yeah.
the water space is cool, that you're not going to get rich off of being a civil engineer. Like, you're doing it because you like to build shit. You want to help out your community, and if there's a better way to do it, you're gonna probably try it if it makes sense and it's safe and it's better than the alternative. So it's been good adoption.
Yeah. It's exciting. Super excited to see where Motmot goes in the future here, and to see how I'll support it in any way possible, because I believe in it. Just from a little bit of talking you and I did the last couple of days, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. So super excited to get the product to market. And honestly, man, it's going to be fun just to disrupt the space. And that's kind of how I look at it. I was like, dude, this is going to be great, because it's going to take a bunch of us to get out there and make education,
Yeah.
get your stuff out there to talk about it, so that it becomes a popular new way of inspecting water systems. I mean, really, let's just think about it that way. And the crazy thing is, there's 160,000 water systems in America alone, which is a lot of ground to cover, right?
It's we call that a very big TAM, total addressable market. But that's the business college speaking now. But yeah, no, we're trying to get it as cheap and as affordable as possible, right? Like, our whole thing is the communities that need help the most, that need visibility the most, that need to manage their systems the most, are typically the ones that can't afford it, right? So it's like, how do you help the communities that need the most?
Yeah.
That's our mission.
I'm excited, man, to see where your journey goes and to keep the audience updated. We'll definitely do this again in, maybe another 8 to 12 months. You and I will sit down and have another conversation. I have some other cool tech that I've been talking about, which is meta materials. I don't know if you ever saw the episode we did with that for bridges and construction, like concrete
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yep,
Dude,
yep.
with yours and all these different tech that's coming out, I'm super excited and excited to see where you land and all the good stuff that's going to happen in the future here. So I appreciate you.
Dude, we're excited to show the adventure too. We're gonna be disruptive, and I hope the wave is big enough to really make the difference that we see it to
Yeah.
make.
Is there any timeline before we end here, like the product to market, like how far we are out? Like are we years out, and where are we at?
Yeah, so like I said, right now we're in the lab, partnership up with Waterworks, got our pilot programs, we got a prototype. My goal is to get the prototype going and working within the Waterworks department here within the next 6 months.
Okay.
That is an aggressive goal. Coming from civil engineering, you got to double your timelines and double your budget, but I'm going to be on them. So I've got a pretty good team. I think it could probably slip to 9 months, but we're going to target 6. And the goal is to service our first 2 pilots this time next year.
Love it, man. Truly appreciate your time and being on the show and giving us some insights into Motmot and the future, man, of water.
For sure. This was an awesome time, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. So it's cool.
Yeah, man. How can people get a hold of you?
Feel free to either go to our website, it's modmotco.com, or if you want to connect on LinkedIn and talk there too, always happy to take phone calls and just talk to folks. But yeah, our website, Elliot@motmotco.com, is another way to get a hold of me, but mostly on LinkedIn a lot. So that's probably the best.
LinkedIn is the new way of networking. I've learned really, it is one of those social media tools that everyone should be using. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thanks again, Elliot. Truly appreciate you being on the show, and you have a great day.
All right. I appreciate it again. Thank you, Chad.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Infrastructure Network.